you feeling it all? Are you feeling all this water, but also this sudden movement of cataclysmic, watery, emotional energy in the air? Especially the last couple of days were really intense breakthroughs for better or ill for many people. And that is, of course, because we have a very rare constellation of a grand water trine in the air, which is in and of itself not necessarily that rare, but the fact that it includes Saturn and Neptune at the end of Pisces, who are both in turn making a trine to Jupiter at the end of Cancer, and in that way holding that constellation on both of their respective ends for quite a while to come, and the fact that we're now fully entering Scorpio season the last couple of days, and Mercury and Mars, of course, already having been now in Scorpio for a while, and the first ones to activate this water trine, means that this grand water trine, or the grand trine constellation in general, will be maintained for a much longer period of time than it usually would with a fast passing transit of an activation of the moon or Venus or something. So that is very significant, and yes, we will definitely feel it. On top of the end of the Saturn and Neptune cycle in Pisces, which we can already feel so much as well, the tiredness, the confusion, the feeling lost, the overwhelm, the grief, but also the deeper tuning in and the deeper reflective energetic in the air right now. It plays out through Pisces, through water, and water is what we most commonly experience on the emotional realm. The emotional, watery, lunar body of our psyche, the waters within our physical body, they're both ruled by that moon, the first level of the body, right? And thus also the emotional body is both ruled by that archetype of the moon, which of course also with Jupiter in Cancer gets activated very strongly here. And there's so much more to say just about the trine between Jupiter and Saturn. The trine between Jupiter and Neptune won't perfect until sometime next year, because Jupiter is about to go retrograde. Neptune only reaches 29 degrees of Pisces. Jupiter stays still now at 25. So they won't get into that full trine activation, the spiritual potential that brings, which definitely speaks so much about faith and spirit and belief and spirituality and deeper belief systems and how we transcend or yearn for transcendence. But the Jupiter-Saturn cycle in of itself, the opening trine now, right? The conjunction began at the December solstice of 2020 on 0 degrees of Aquarius. You might remember the great conjunction. And now it's the first opening trine. After the heaviness of the first square the last year, the trine brings a lot of movement, a lot of openness. How we manifest Saturn, our beliefs, Jupiter, into reality, Saturn. The constructs and stability that we form and shape also by our discipline and integrity and wise use of time, Saturn, consolating how we can look for and bring more expansion and light and wisdom, Jupiter, or the things that we really find and give meaning to, Jupiter, into our world. Now, Jupiter being in Cancer is, of course, there is this big quest for Jupiter always implied, and Jupiter in Cancer is a huge quest for belonging and a huge quest for emotional safety and coherency within the emotional body, which in turn includes so much also our inner child. Bringing in the last part, the Scorpio, the alchemical, transmutive waters, the deep waters, the profound waters, the intense waters of Scorpio. Scorpio's traditional ruler, of course, is Mars. Scorpio's modern ruler or co-rulership is attributed to Pluto because they have so much in common. And here we also see in the next couple of weeks, Jupiter at the end of Cancer is opposing Pluto in early Aquarius. It's not perfect yet, and it'll also take until next year, but it can also, it's already in the field, right? Jupiter 25, Pluto on 1 degree, that's just 6 degrees away. So that also implies a lot of intense transformation and transmutation, but also the feeling of a lot, like it's too much. We made our plate too full. We try to chew more than more than we can chew, or that we can internally digest. Jupiter rules that function of the liver, how we deeply digest life experience, and in that way also shape our beliefs, which in turn then tend to constellate how we shape reality around us unconsciously, right? What we believe reality to be, it'll often reflect back to us, most of the time. So Pluto is also strongly in the field, but Mars has already been in Scorpio for a while. And now also for last week's new moon at the end degrees of Libra, also implying that so much of this moon cycle will play out with Libra and the end of Libra dynamics, right? The new moon was at the end of Libra, and in fact all the coming new moons for the next 6-7 months will be at the tail end of their respective signs, implying all of these collective and personal endings and endings and endings, which definitely with the Saturn Neptune cycle at the last degree of the zodiac and then first degree of the zodiac closing and finally meeting next spring or winter, February, show to us that we are in this huge cycle of closing and closure. So no wonder also that the new moons line up in a way where for the next 6-7 consecutive months we'll have new moons at the end of their respective signs. Having begun also with that Virgo eclipse, Virgo solar eclipse, just the day before the solstice, equinox, sorry. So a lot of endings in regards to the Libra domain, relationships and relationship dynamics. Scorpio is of course the deeper layer of relationship dynamics, the deep intimacy, the trust and vulnerability that we experience there, but also the vulnerability is a key fragment of Scorpio energy that it's actually very afraid of. All the water signs are immensely vulnerable and all protective in their own unique ways, where Cancer tends to retreat within and or maybe create a hard shell without to protect itself from the impacts, the waves, the comets on the moon, the impacts of outer reality. Pisces tends to evade, become like a fish, become like water, you can't grasp it. So evasion and avoidance or even escapism is a Piscean defense mechanism actually. Yet we tend to view Scorpio as the most defensive of them all because its defense is often a type of offense. There is also, just like the Cancer crab, if we just look at the zodiac imagery, this exoskeleton, but in the Scorpio, in the actual Scorpion, it's like everything is attack, everything is defense. It's very, very, the entire form and shape of this being is so much constellated around attack and defense. The huge sting, the huge claws, tiny being hiding in the shadows. That's Scorpio's defense mechanism, which, yes, is the most afraid of vulnerability in many ways, does not like to be exposed, does not like to be seen in the light of day. And yet that is exactly, of course, what we're being invited to do right now in Scorpio season in general, to dive into the depths, to dive into the emotional deep waters, the waters that normally we don't really expose or normally are not even consciously aware of and in contact with within ourselves. And that Scorpio completes this grand water trine, right? Just speaking on the nature of the trine more in general before trying to pick the little individual parts more apart, which is a bit too much to do in this video at least. The grand water trine implies that all of the watery areas of the chart, of our life, of our psyche, of our inner being get activated very, very strongly. The Cancer side, the emotions, the emotional nourishment, the emotional safety we yearn for, the home and roots and belonging and where and how we feel safe with another. Pisces, how we ultimately find absolute meaning and transcendence of reality and of our life experience, to believe the faith that we have in it, or when how we might feel victimized or impotent, like we can't deal with reality in that way, have to escape it, escape this body, escape this situation, whatever, numb ourselves, avoid confronting it. And the Scorpio side, where and how we actually yearn deeply, crave and desire fully for life experience, for intimacy, for penetration, right? That Scorpio stinger, it penetrates the skin if it hits you. And yeah, there is of course that big sexual connotation that people usually assume with Scorpio, but that is just one little part of the whole thing. The yearning for deeply merging or being alchemized and feeling like one is penetrating life or being penetrated by life is like this full reveal, the kind of like tearing out oneself open, and in that we're really feeling like we're fully here and engaging, and not just like hiding in the shadows of trying to prevent any kind of harm or wound to be inflicted upon us from life, from reality, from other people. So the nature of a grand trine in general implies that, in this case it's in water, that the elementary energy is flowing very fast. The nature of a trine is, in Hellenistic astrology, considered to be of the nature of Jupiter. There's a fast flow of energy, there's a very direct coherence and direct reciprocity to the energy that is being released or given out. In our own personal birth charts, we often tend to even not be really conscious of a trine in general, because it implies such a great talent or gift in our psyche that comes very naturally to us. So there is often a pattern where we don't even become fully conscious of it, and in that same time not really fully actualize and develop the qualities it signifies totally, because we take it for granted so much. In personal birth chart readings, trines energy are usually, apart from like very major activations by the slow planets, maybe Neptune or Pluto, usually also not something that at least I personally focus on too much on, because it's kind of feels like a given. It just comes, and it doesn't feel like such a big struggle in life and in reality, and at least for why people come to one-on-one sessions or like are seeking help or advice or different perspective on why certain things are happening to them. Because the trine is always like there in the background, giving an upliftment and showing like, whoa, things are moving and moving forward, progressing in a way that we usually feel like is very beneficial. And then having a grand trine, so three points on the chart connecting, all with a 120-degree angle, thus implies that there's this very strong swirling of energy, kind of, if we want to think of like a whirlpool where it's like the energy just, it has no friction on neither point, and in that way the movement, the energetic spiraling can just become more and more profound, more and more intensified. So there is very fast movement, and then with all of these degrees being activated in the sky right now, of course also means that so many degrees for so many people will get activated with this. Late Cancer, late Pisces, late Scorpio, but then also the oppositions of Scorpio, late Taurus, or the squares, late Aquarius or late Leo energy as well, right? So all of these will, for the coming weeks, until the middle of December actually, get really constellated and get really activated. So we will see this pattern in the sky play out much more so than maybe that thing or that transit or that new moon, which might be hitting your personal chart very strongly and you really feel it, but your friend or your partner really doesn't. And then fast forward 2-3 weeks later, maybe some new full moon comes along and it activates something in the chart of your partner or your best friends really strongly, but not on your own. And you see them really being activated and processing something because of that, but you feel like more of an observer to things. But by its very nature, the fact that so many parts of the sky, so many parts of the circle, the zodiac, get activated very strongly right now, we'll also see this playing out much more. And then another thing, just in nature to the trine in general, together with these outer planets, is to think about also that we have these world-changing tectonic plates rearranging, consciousness modulating activations collectively right now. Neptune ending its time through the zodiac and beginning a new spiral. Saturn closing its cycle with Neptune for the first time since 1989, right? A lot of things ahead for us there next year. And then Jupiter also making its trine now in late Pisces, late Cancer to late Pisces, right? The opening of the potential that was seeded at that seed point of the December solstice 2020 with their conjunction, now beginning to blossom and opening up more new possibilities, new potentials of how we can make, again, manifest and concrete and stable in physical reality Saturn, our visions and dreams, and how we bring meaning to the world and how we distill wisdom from that Jupiter. So these are in the sky, and these have been in the sky for the past weeks and months and this entire year, more or less. But now the grand trine with the faster moving planets, first it was Mars and Mercury now, and then slowly it'll be the Sun, and then Venus moving through Scorpio, and then Mercury will also go retrograde in a bit in early Sagittarius and move back to Scorpio and move back over the exact degree points, 24, 25 degrees for the trine to Jupiter and Saturn, and 29 degrees for the trine to Neptune. All of these faster moving planets and the moon on top of that, they are kind of like pulling the energy down. When we have like this big constellated field of these collective energies, Saturn, Neptune, Jupiter, hanging out there in the field, in the high astral realm, if you like, the movement of the faster planets, Mars, Mercury, the Sun, Venus, the Moon, they kind of bring it down to our sphere and only first really activate and bring into conscious process or manifestation the energies that maybe have been building in your own personal life already for weeks or months. So they are kind of really like these activists, these catalysts that make things really tangible. Without their movement, big outer movements can happen of the outer planets, but until the Moon, Mercury, Mars, the Sun come along, they don't really get activated and pulled into the sphere. So now we just had Mercury and Mars together on 20 degrees for this Libra new moon. And now within the last couple of days, they both consecutively hit 24, 25 degrees. Mercury today is on 29 degrees of Scorpio, so it's just about to go into Sagittarius, and that way also perfectly trining Neptune on 29 of Pisces. And you maybe have felt a lot of intense activations. Again, Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio, and in that way it relates so much to how we actualize through action our will and desire in nature, also from that deep emotional part of our being. Mars rulership in Aries is more like that first spark of spirit, of fire, of identity, of instinct, of I want, I will, I go this way. But by the time we have reached Scorpio, half a year, more than half a year later in the zodiac, in the cycle, 7 signs later, this first initial impact and instinct of Aries has gone through all of these metabolisms of the other signs, of these other processes, and now reached a much deeper part where it's really being felt on a deep emotional level. With Scorpio, people often say, I feel it on a soul level. It's a deep yearning on the soul, the burning fire of desire of the soul level. Yes, Scorpio is a water sign, but Mars is a fiery planet, right? So Mars in Scorpio is so much about learning to actualize our deepest desire, and where there is often this deep desire for deeper intimacy and penetration, for lack of a better word. And I really hope you know what I'm getting at here, apart from any kind of sexual ideas. The really feeling like we are really in it. Life is really in me. There is, of course, often this deep yearning and desire with Scorpio also for intimacy with another. Like I said, Scorpio comes after Libra. It's about the deeper intimacy of relationships, trust and broken trust, vulnerability, but also hardness and coldness, where we like tend to just become ice princesses and cut things off, where we ghost, right? Ghosts and the occult are ruled by Scorpio, and ghosting is a very kind of Scorpio thing to do on some level at least. I was like also thinking about some other signs. You might have your own guesses here. So Mars and Scorpio, And Mercury also on Scorpio maybe have already brought a lot of communications, Mercury, conversations, mental insights, things we read, things we overheard, things that came to us in a dream. The dream world is really active with this big water energy. The deep intuitive, mediumistic, channeling kind of quality of our emotions is really active right now. The feeling like, did I dream this or did this actually happen? The deep just like knowing what you at or where you at with another person, maybe feeling in between the field, really active. But Mercury might have brought information, insights, conversations, communications, confrontations that maybe gave you much more clarity on how to do your mass thing, how to actualize your will, how to go about your desire, how to find clarity on what it is you actually desire, and how you can get into deeper intimacy with that part of yourself as well. Mercury and Mars, of course, also imply fire, mass, and cutting, mass. Mercury, words. So where and how maybe words have been fiery or cutting or burning or wounding. Maybe being very, very honest and direct and confrontational. But like I said, the end of Libra was being activated with this new moon, which means that this entire moon cycle, we're also in some kind of process of ending relational patterns, changing relational patterns, or maybe even ending relationships in general. But yeah, for the better, hopefully this combination would have brought a lot of clarity around these things, and we'll have more, of course, because Mercury, even though it's much faster, will go retrograde and in that way have another conversation, another exact conjunction with Mars. And then Mercury will, of course, also go into Scorpio, a whole another video, the Mercury retrograde thing. But yeah, as they move forward, the Sun and then later on Venus will also approach these later degrees of Scorpio. So even though Mercury now within the next 24 hours and then Mars will both slip into Sagittarius over the next couple of days, a week I think, early November, they will still form a trine pattern. They'll be out of sign, they'll both be in fire, while this big water energy is still present. And of course, we still have the Sun in Scorpio, we still have Venus in Scorpio by that point. So big water energy and all that water implies. The emotions, the emotional unconscious, our inner child, which in general I think is a huge theme here right now, that so much of the expansion that we yearn for Jupiter, the new life that we want to bring into this world, whether with actual children or whatever other kind of vision that we have of life and reality, how that is constellated by and formed and shaped by, yet at the same time also shapes the Pisces area, right? Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. So how we find meaning in the world, how and what kind of meaning we give to life. It's also being shown here. And how we maybe have to make a lot of new space, Jupiter, in our emotional body, where the old emotional patterns are not serving us any longer. And there is, of course, again, that Scorpio theme of transformation and transmutation and alchemy, but often also very strong resistance to that. And where very, very often the resistance to change actually creates much more suffering than the true and valid pain that we feel when something or some part of us is dying and needing to be reborn. So the resistance to change, the resistance to transformation often creates much more internal suffering than actually swallowing the bitter medicine, right? The Scorpio poison that we can turn into medicine to embrace change and transformation. And with that, also not forgetting that Scorpio is, of course, ruling also our shadow, the unconscious, which no matter how much work we do on ourselves, no matter how much we think or might believe that we are so and so evolved, Scorpio implies a certain degree of shadow, always. A realm and a part of our psyche which we are not fully conscious of, which we again and again periodically have to dive deep into, and will often come out the wiser and the stronger for it, but also changed and transmuted and never the same as before. And which is inexhaustible in many ways. The unconscious is inexhaustible. You will never have worked it all out. You will never have healed all of the stuff your inner child needs to heal. You will have never exhausted the family inheritance or known all the family secrets that are relevant to your life. There's always more. So also not falling into the trap of believing that by resisting and protecting ourselves from feeling, from intimacy, from vulnerability, that we can resist change and maintain control. That's a shadow of Scorpio, trying to maintain control. And in that way, resisting their own transformation. Because as much as Scorpio is that longing for death and transformation, in that metaphorical sense, it also resists and kind of hates it. There's also these basic concepts of Freud, Sigmund Freud of course, of eros and thanatos, the desire and wish for life, love or pleasure, eros, and the desire and yearning for the ceasing of life and the ending of these cycles of transformation, which again is just its own cycle of transformation. So they often tend to play out a lot with Scorpio, and also with all of these constellations and activations and this grand water energy being activated here. Pisces and Cancer are key components. They are hovering back there in the field. In many ways, it's exactly about that. It's exactly about their domain. But what we might consciously experience or appreciate or understand to be happening will probably be focused much more on the Scorpio area, because this is where the fast-moving planets are happening. But yeah, all of this change, transformation, re-empowerment of Scorpio actually is rooted in and needs to happen through Jupiter in Cancer, the inner emotional body of our inner child, and the Pisces area and the end of Neptune and Saturn and Pisces, and this huge collective ending, this huge wave, the collective feeling of loss, of grief, of overwhelm, but also of transcendence and yearning, and how we find deeper meaning and deeper trust and deeper faith and connection to spirit. These are more the key themes, I would say, but it'll play out much more consciously and in direct actions and experience, and oh my god, this thing happened to me today, in the Scorpio kind of domain. And all it wants us to do, I find this grand trine in general, is so much about bringing us into a deeper felt experience of reality, into a clearer emotional alignment. And yeah, that inner child work is absolute key in that, so that we can open up to new realities, because the unconscious belief systems that dictate how we experience reality, to really shift and shape them, that's what the Scorpio work will also bring to us. So yeah, it's super strong water energy. In many ways, I think it's also something to be enjoyed. This is not something that's going to happen every day. And despite, or maybe exactly because of all the transmutation that is happening here, to also learn to savor it. Because once Saturn and Neptune will be in Aries next year, really fully, and once Uranus fully enters Gemini, and then by summer, June, July, I think, Jupiter will also enter Leo. And all of these speak of so much speed, like swiftness of change and immense forward momentum. And it'll be what it'll be. It'll be exactly what it's supposed to be in many ways, at least personally. But I think we will also yearn and long for and kind of miss the bit heavier, deeper, watery energy that we get to experience right now once these changes start picking up further from next year on. But yeah, the energy will be more or less with different gradients and different planetary aspects be in the field until middle of December. And that Neptune and Pisces, of that beacon of trust, hope, compassion, forgiveness, is also, I think, a key component here, so that we don't tend to fall into the trap of Scorpio, of becoming vindictive, seeking revenge, becoming cold, becoming hard on ourselves. It's preventing ourselves from feeling what we even meant to be feeling. And there it is again, the only way to heal it is to feel it. Yeah, that's enough for me today. Thank you so much for listening. I filmed into the night, in line with Scorpio energy, embracing the coming darkness and going into your own darkness, and not just making friends with it, but seeing that is actually a core part of yourself, and that the deeper intimacy with ourselves, and also with the things that we first maybe try to hush away into our shadow, into our subconscious, into the skeleton in the closet, those are usually actually the ones that can empower us the most. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you soon.